beginning at the 14th verse. Jesus said to his disciples, "For it is as a man going on a journey, some of his slaves entrusted his property to them. To the one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, to another 1, to each according to their ability. Then he went away. The one who had received the 5 talents went off at once and traded with them and made 5 more talents. In the same way, the one who had the 2 talents made 2 more talents. But the one who had received the 1 talent went off and dug a hole in the ground and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those slaves came and settled the accounts with them. Then the one who had received the 5 talents came forward, bringing 5 more talents, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 5 talents. See, I have made 5 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' The one with 2 talents also came forward, saying, 'Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents.' His master said to him, 'Well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I'll put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master.' Then the one who had received the 1 talent came forward, saying, 'Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here, have what is yours.' But the master replied, 'You wicked and lazy slave, you knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what was my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with the 10 talents. To all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for the worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.'" Here ends the gospel for the day. Please be seated. There are many ways that this text could be interpreted this Sunday, but I'm going to take an attack different than what I usually do and just label it a prescription for failure. It is part of a series of sermons just before the end of our church year, and this year in the first order of pericope text, we have all readings from Matthew, and all of them are concentrated on being accountable to what you've been given in life. That there is a time when there is a place where you're going to come before your master and make an accountability for what you've done, what you've said, what kind of a life you've lived, how you've lived in terms of others, and how much of worship experience you've had in terms of Almighty God. This man today, in the story about the talents, was one that destroyed any chance he had of being successful because he just didn't try. He didn't even begin to do something with what he had been given. And I'm going to suggest there are 3 reasons why you don't try, which then become a prescription for failure. both in life and in terms of worship. The first is this. The one-talent person, and maybe I should use dollars and cents because that's what we're familiar with. Talent was a part of money, but let's use 5,000, 20,000, and 50,000 in terms of talents. The first person didn't appreciate what he had. He simply took it and buried it in the ground. Now, I don't know how any of you can think that if you were given something, you would just take it and bury it. You would just at least try something, even if it was to spend it on something foolish. But in this case, the person that worked for the master should have known there was something expected from what he'd been given. There are those of us who think that God shouldn't expect anything of us. After all, we just weren't given enough. We weren't given many talents. That's the response I get from so many people when I ask them to do something, is the response is, oh, I couldn't do that because I just don't have any ability in that area. And that might be true, but you have abilities. All of you are giving something precious. This last week we have spent time in the creation in the first 11 chapters of Genesis talking about creation. And the emphasis time and time again was man is created in the image of God. And how can you not say that you have nothing to give, no matter what your situation is? And so on this day I ask you to think. Think about what is going on around you. Go watch the news on the evening newscast and look at what's happening in Gaza, of those people who have been deprived of everything they've ever owned, ever had, ever earned. And you sit in terms of them in a lap of luxury with all kinds of abilities, all kinds of things you can do. But so often we stand boldly and say, we don't have any talent. We don't have any investment to give back. This country doesn't have enough opportunities. The church isn't exciting enough. Whatever it is, there's a lack of appreciation for all those things that we have. There's a book by the name of J. Walker Hamilton, who talks about a farmer who inherited a farm from his father. And he was always complaining about what he had been given, that it wasn't quite good enough. And he constantly berated the farm that he was given and had the opportunity to do something with. So he decided to list it with a realtor. And so the realtor came and met with him, and they wrote up an advertisement for this sale. And it read like this: beautiful farmhouse, ideal location, excellent barn, good pasture, fertile soil, up-to-date equipment, well-bred stock, close to town, near church, good school. The farmer looked at it and said, wait. He said, I want you to enlist it. This is the kind of farm I'm looking for. And I know that's supposed to be a funny antidote, but it's the way we handle things. So often we are looking for somewhere beyond ourselves for opportunity, and it's right there. Another author wrote a book that's the pet child of those motivational speakers. It's called Acres of Diamonds. And it talks about a Persian farmer who was bent on gaining wealth, absolute wealth for himself. And so he sold his farm to go looking for diamond mines. And what happens then is, of course, the diamond mine is found in the home of the farmer who just sold it. He just didn't take time to look at what was closest to him and find the value there. And that's what it is about not appreciating your talents, isn't it? We just don't look at ourselves close enough and find that there's a treasure there. And look into the eyes of the creation story and say, God created me in His image. And while I not be perfect, there's a gold mine there. There's a gold mine to give. There's a gold mine to shine. There's a gold mine to contribute to the lives of others. And there's a gold mine in worship that I can find if I appreciate what has been given me. There are times when I really feel elated, and that is when somebody looks at me straight in the face and says, I am so blessed. I am so blessed. And for a moment it seems like it's something arrogant, but it isn't. It's recognizing what you have been given by a holy God. So I'm going to lean on you to learn a couple of phrases this morning, and this is one. I am so blessed. I want you to take just a second and think about where you are and what you have and what potential is there, and say, I am so blessed. Can we say it together? I am so blessed. Okay, now that's acceptance. The second reason that the third slave had a prescription for failure is because he didn't accept what he had. Didn't accept it. And this sounds pretty much like the first point I made, but it's really something different. It's about talking about the fact that you have limitations. Things that you can't do. But these are only things to strengthen the things that you can do. A person that loses one of the five senses loses something extremely valuable. But what it does is build up all the other senses. Those that have been blind are very good in accomplishing things which involve sound. And those that are deaf have extreme ability to be more precise in sight. All of us are in situations where we don't have something that we might like to have had. But this is only to strengthen the things that we do have. And so you might be saying, like the third slave, if I had 10,000 or 20,000 or 50,000, I could do so much more. And it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. And to accept that you have limitations. I'm sure that you have said at one time or another, oh, if I had only had this, if I'd only had a better spouse, if only I had more opportunity, if only I had more education, more training, whatever it is, I could have done so much better. But one of the real truths of life is I have to expect that I am not competent or superior in every possible human trait. Some of you can pretty well guess that you'll never be Miss America, that you'll eventually die, that you can't skirt the law of gravity, that you can't stop your aging. Those are all shortcomings in the path of life. But you can take advantage of what you have and accept your limitations. I would have liked to have been an opera singer. I would have liked to have been a professional golfer. I would like to have been a major studio actor. right. There were always things barring the physical talent limitations. Didn't accomplish that. But it gave me some strength, and some strength to be here with you and be involved in a pilgrimage of God's grace. Third, slave had a prescription for faith. He didn't appreciate what he had. He didn't accept the limitations that he had. So now, I'll ask you to say another thing. I accept my limitations. Think about what they are, and think about how might they contribute to what you do have. So say with me, I accept my limitations. I accept my limitations. The third reason he was a failure was that he didn't use what he had. He didn't use what he had. One of the things that I see every place that I go are help wanted signs. What happened to all these people who could fill those positions? Every major manager of store that I've talked to says the biggest problem they have is simply people don't want to work. I talked to a pastor who was a pastor in a big church with many on the staff, and he said one of the things that he really doesn't have much excitement about is that the new clergy doesn't seem to want to work. The third slave went and buried his talent. And sometimes that's what we do. Just go and bury the talent. Make a lot of excuses, but never take advantage of those things that we have. We might not accomplish much in what we try, but we need to try. We might not be successful at a job that the church asks us to do, but try. Maybe it's because of procrastination. Maybe this third slave just thought he might do something with the 5,000 he'd been given. Just give him a little more time. But time runs out. And a lot of people have lost a lot of ability to do something simply because they procrastinate. Sometimes the ability is to have a good relationship. Sometimes it's an opportunity to excel in something that you were trained to do, maybe earlier in life. Leo Biscaglia was a professor at the University of Southern California. He developed a course on love. It was the most enrolled for class. It was always filled the first few minutes of open enrollment at the college, the University of Southern California. One of the assignments that he gave to his students was, if you had only 5 minutes to live, what would you do? And when he got the papers back, she said he was going to correct. He kept them for a couple of days and then he gave them back. But one of the things that he saw, and those things that people thought would be really important if you had only 5 minutes to live. And they were saying, I would say I was sorry to a lot of people. I would pray a lot. I would mend relationships. I would try to make things better between myself and my parents. All things that you would expect somebody to say when they were given that assignment. If you had only 5 minutes to live, what would you do? And on the top of each paper, Leo simply wrote, why don't you do it now? He in a class also wrote a little poem from a woman who was talking also about making use of what you have at the time, at the present time, and not putting it off. She talked about a young man that she had loved, and she recalled so many things about him. The day he gave her his new car to drive, and she dented it, and he didn't seem to get mad about it. She remembered the time she forgot to tell him the dance they were going to was formal, and he showed up in blue jeans. She talked about the times that she flirted with other boys to make him jealous, simply to irritate him. And she said, well, I'll just make it all up when he comes back. But he went to Vietnam, and he didn't come back. And she labeled it all the things I could have done at the moment I thought about them. The third servant didn't use what he had. I tell the story often about my uncle who wanted to be in the Metropolitan Opera also. He did have a good voice. And he went to the regional trials in Minneapolis. And he's tried out, and he was in the finalists. And when he sat down with the judges said, you know, Art, you do have the ability to sing in the Metropolitan Opera. He said, it's going to take a lot of work, but you have the ability. You have the gifts. God really endowed you with something very special. He said, you're going to miss a lot of meals. And Art said, I like to eat. He did. He went to insurance and never liked it. Always regretted the decision he'd made. Died very unhappy. We're given gifts, given talents, given abilities. And sometimes we fail because we do not appreciate them, we do not accept it, and we don't use what we have. And so the third little sentence I'd like you to say today is, I will use what I have for God's work today. I will use what I have for God's work today. Amen. Sermon hymn on Jordan's stormy banks I stand, 437 in the Red Book. Stand as you are able.